Belief in the person being an error, they are without self. 7. Because bodhi is found by destroying the idea of self, they are without self. For these many reasons, conditioned dharmas are without self. All this has dealt with the shared characteristics. 4. Specific characteristics. Earth has as characteristic solidity. Fire has as characteristic heat. Water has as characteristic moistness. Wind has as characteristic motion. The eye has as characteristic being the support of the visual consciousness. And mutates muta and dis, it is the same for the ear, nose, tongue, and body. Consciousness has as characteristic investigation. Knowledge has as characteristic wisdom. Generosity has as characteristic renunciation. Morality has as characteristic absence of regret and absence of violence. Patience has as characteristic absence of irritation. Exertion has as characteristic effort. Trance has as characteristic concentration of the mind. Wisdom has as characteristic mental detachment. Skillful means has as characteristic the creation of objects. Samsara has as characteristic the weaving of births and deaths. Nirvana has as characteristic non-weaving. Such dharmas each has its own specific characteristic, and we should know that these characteristics are empty. This is what is called emptiness of specific characteristics. For other meanings, refer to what has been said about the emptiness of essences, since essence and characteristic are synonyms. 5. Why insist on the emptiness of specific characteristics? Question. Why does the Prajnaparamita Sutra not simply say emptiness of characteristics but says emptiness of specific characteristics? Answer. To say just emptiness of characteristics is to pass over in silence the fundamental emptiness of dharmas. To speak of the emptiness of specific characteristics is to deal with the fundamental emptiness of dharmas. Moreover, every dharma, arising from a group of causes and conditions, is an empty dharma, and thus each dharma taken individually is empty. The grouped causes and conditions forming a succession of dharmas is itself empty as well. Thus all dharmas are each empty of specific characteristic. This is why the emptiness of specific characteristics is spoken of here. 6. Why carry on about empty dharmas? Question. If all dharmas are each empty of intrinsic characteristics, why talk about it again? Answer. As a result of mistakes, beings become attached to these dharmas by finding in them characteristics of identity or difference, shared characteristics, or specific characteristics. It is in order to destroy them that we speak of them here. For all these reasons, the Prajnaparamita Sutra asserts an emptiness of specific characteristics. Sarvate Harme Sunyata. 12th section, Emptiness 14. Emptiness of all dharmas. Emptiness of all dharmas. By all dharmas we mean the 5 aggregates, the 12 bases of consciousness, and the 18 elements. Unitary categories in every dharma. Throughout, these dharmas belong to many categories, in the sense that all dharmas have 1. A characteristic of existence. 2. A characteristic of knowledge. 3. A characteristic of consciousness. 4. A characteristic of object. 5. A characteristic of dominance. 6. A characteristic of cause and a characteristic of effect. 7. A shared characteristic and a specific characteristic. 8. A characteristic of support. 1. How do all dharmas have a characteristic of existence? Among all these dharmas, there are some beautiful and some ugly, there are some internal and some external. All dharmas, being a place of arising for the mind, are said to be existent. Question. How could a characteristic of existence be attributed to an adharma? Answer. The adharma is not a dharma. Only because it is counter to existence is it called adharma. If it were really an adharma, it would be existent. This is why it is said that all dharmas have a characteristic of existence. 2. They have a characteristic of knowledge. A. The knowledge of suffering and the subsequent knowledge of suffering cognize the truth of suffering. B. The knowledge of the origin and the subsequent knowledge of the origin cognize the truth of the origin. C. The knowledge of the destruction and the subsequent knowledge of the destruction cognize the truth of the destruction. D. The knowledge of the path and the subsequent knowledge of the path cognize the truth of the path. E. The good conventional knowledge cognizes suffering, the origin, the destruction, the path, and also cognizes space and cessation not due to wisdom. Therefore it is said that all dharmas have a characteristic of knowledge and, by means of this characteristic of knowledge, embrace all dharmas. 3. They have a characteristic of consciousness. A. The eye consciousness perceives color. B. The ear consciousness perceives sound. C. The nose consciousness perceives odor. D. The tongue consciousness perceives taste. E. The body consciousness perceives the tangible. F. The mental consciousness perceives dharmas and consequently the eye, color, and the eye consciousness. The ear, sound and the ear consciousness. The nose, smell, and the nose consciousness. The tongue, taste, and the tongue consciousness. The body, touch, and the body consciousness. The mind, dharmas, and the mental consciousness. Therefore it is said that all dharmas have a characteristic of consciousness. 4. They have a characteristic of object. A. The eye consciousness and the dharmas associated with the eye consciousness sees color. B. The ear consciousness and the dharmas associated with the ear consciousness sees sound. C. The nose consciousness and the dharmas associated with the nose consciousness sees smell. D. The tongue consciousness and the dharmas associated with the tongue consciousness sees taste. E. The body consciousness and the dharmas associated with the body consciousness sees the tangible. F. The mental consciousness and the dharmas associated with the mental consciousness sees dharmas, and consequently the eye, color, and the eye consciousness. The ear, sound and the ear consciousness. The nose, smell, and the nose consciousness. The tongue, taste, and the tongue consciousness. The body, touch, and the body consciousness. The mind, dharmas, and the mental consciousness. Therefore it is said that all dharmas have a characteristic of object. 5. They have a characteristic of dominance. A. All conditioned dharmas are, each separately, dominant. B. Unconditioned dharmas also are dominant in respect to conditioned dharmas. Therefore it is said that all dharmas have a characteristic of dominance. 6. They have characteristics of cause and effect. All dharmas are each both cause and effect. Therefore it is said that all dharmas have the characteristics of cause and effect. 7. They have a shared characteristic and a specific characteristic. In every dharma, there is a shared and a specific characteristic for each. For example, the horse is a shared characteristic, but its whiteness is a specific characteristic. The man is a shared characteristic, but the fact that he has lost an ear is a specific characteristic. Thus for each series there is a generic and a specific characteristic. Therefore it is said that all dharmas have a shared and a specific characteristic. 8. They have a characteristic of support.